A very good Friday to everyone. Welcome into today's daily Bible reading for April the 7th. Today we are finishing up our read through Leviticus, it being in Leviticus 27 today. Sorry for this reading not being posted at the regular time. I made the critical mistake yesterday, not necessarily of mowing. I needed to mow. I wanted to get it in before the rain came in. But my critical mistake was that I did not wear my little neck gaiter thing that I normally wear while I mow, to put up over my nose and mouth to keep all the mowing particles and grass and dust and everything from getting in me. Oh, I regret that so much because it made the rest of yesterday very, very uncomfortable. I tried to get a reading done, but it just didn't happen. I was sneezed no less than 100 times, it feels like. Went through no less than 50 tissues probably, and it just wasn't going to be good. So I apologize for that, but we're getting back to it today. I'm still itchy and scratchy, but my nose is not a fountain, and I have not sneezed yet, knock on wood. So we'll see how it goes. We'll try to get through this reading as quickly as possible. Again, thanks so much for taking the time to read along with me on this Friday. Let me get our text of Leviticus 27 up on the screen. We'll get read through this, have a few considerations. Then tomorrow we'll get to begin in the book of Numbers. So here we have in Leviticus 27 some details concerning how the sanctuary, the temple, or excuse me, the tabernacle complex, and probably feeding into the temple complex, how this would be funded. It would take obviously monetary means to support the work of the tabernacle, to support the Levites, and here's how that would take place. It's a bit awkward, maybe, how this is just kind of thrown in at the end of Leviticus, because the end of Leviticus 26, it sounds like a pretty good ending, concluding the holiness code and focusing in on that, and then reading these are the statutes, ordinances, and laws that Yahweh established between himself and the Israelites through Moses on Mount Sinai. That sounds like a great ending. But then we have chapter 27 added on, and some think maybe this was an appendix added on later on, just as a means of helping to explain some things. Or it just could be that this was given. Again, we've just talked a lot about holiness and the work, especially that the priests would do in that. So here's how they would be helped in accomplishing those things in the tabernacle setting. So regardless of whether or not this was something that was written right alongside of the rest of Leviticus, or maybe even if it was something added later on, I think the Holy Spirit would still have been very much a part of that. We have it today. We are confident in it today, and it helps us in understanding a little bit more about the inner workings of the tabernacle system and how they were able to get things done. And it happened basically through these vows, these special vows that would be made to the sanctuary. We'll talk about that here as we read through. So reading here in Numbers chapter 27, verse number 1. Yahweh spoke to Moses, "Speak to the Israelites and tell them, when someone makes a special vow to Yahweh that involves the assessment of people, if the assessment concerns a male from 20 to 60 years old, our assessment, or your assessment, is 50 silver shekels measured by the standard sanctuary shekel. If the person is a female, your assessment is 30 shekels. If the person is from 5 to 20 years old, your assessment for a male is 20 shekels, and for a female, 10 shekels. If the person is 1 month to 5 years old, your assessment for a male is 5 shekels, and for a female, your assessment is 3 shekels of silver. If the person is 60 years old or more, your assessment is 15 shekels for a male and 10 shekels for a female. But if one is too poor to pay the assessment, he is to present the person before the priest, and the priest will set a value for him. The priest will set a value for him according to what the one making the vow can afford. If the vow involves one of the animals that may be brought as an offering to Yahweh, any of these he gives to Yahweh will be holy. He may not replace it or make substitution for it, either good or bad, or bad or good for good. Either good for bad or bad for good. But if he does substitute one animal for another, both the animal and its substitute will be holy. If the vow involves any of the unclean animals that may not be brought as an offering to Yahweh, the animal must be presented before the priest. The priest will set its value, whether high or low. The price will be set as the priest makes the assessment for you. If the one who brought it decides to redeem it, he must add a fifth to the assessed value. When a man consecrates his house as holy to Yahweh, the priest will assess its value, whether high or low. The price will stand just as the priest assesses it. But if the one who consecrates his house redeems it, he must add a fifth to the assessed value, and it will be his. If a man consecrates to Yahweh any part of a field that he possesses, your assessment of the value will be proportional to the seed needed to sow it, at the rate of 50 silver shekels for every 6 bushels of barley seed. If he consecrates his field during the year of Jubilee, the price will stand according to your assessment. But if he consecrates it, consecrates his field after the Jubilee, the priest will calculate the price for him in proportion to the years left until the next year of Jubilee, so that your assessment will be reduced. And the one who consecrated the field decides to redeem it, he must add a fifth to the assessed value, and the field will transfer back to him. But if he does not redeem it, if he does not redeem the field, or if he has sold it to another man, it is no longer redeemable. When the field is released in the Jubilee, it will be holy to Yahweh, like a field permanently set apart. It becomes the priest's property. If a person consecrates to Yahweh a field he has purchased that is not part of his inherited landholding, then the priest will calculate for him the amount of the assessment up to the year Jubilee, and the person will pay the assessed value on that day as a holy offering to Yahweh. In the year Jubilee, the field will return to the one who bought it from the original owner. Who bought it from the original owner. All those assessed values will be measured by the standard sanctuary shekel, 20 gerahs to the shekel. But no one can consecrate a firstborn of the livestock, whether an animal from the herd or flock, to Yahweh, because a firstborn already belongs to Yahweh. If it is one of the unclean livestock, it can be ransomed according to your assessment by adding a fifth of its value to it. If it is not redeemed, it can be sold according to your assessment. Nothing that a man permanently sets apart to Yahweh from all he owns, whether a person, an animal, or his inherited landholding, can be sold or redeemed. Everything set apart is especially holy to Yahweh. No person who has been set apart for destruction is to be ransomed. He must be put to death. Every tenth of the land's produce, grain from the soil or fruit from the trees, belongs to Yahweh. It is holy to Yahweh. If a man decides to redeem any part of his tenth, he must add a fifth to its value. Every 10th animal from the herd or flock which passes under the shepherd's rod will be holy to Yahweh. He is not to inspect whether it is good or bad, and he is not to make a substitution for it. But if he does make a substitution, both the animal and its substitute will be holy. They cannot be redeemed. These are the commands Yahweh gave to Moses for the Israelites on Mount Sinai. And that concludes Leviticus 27, also the entire book of Leviticus. All right, so let's think about this text here. I'll be honest with you. This text was difficult to understand. I had a hard time grasping. I don't think it was just the allergies, but really it was a hard time grasping exactly what was going on here, because I consider a few different sources in each of my, and every day as I prep, not just to read, but to give some explanation or some nuggets from these particular chapters. And in this chapter, the two resources that I really leaned upon saw this very differently. So that's something that was, or not very differently. They saw it from, there was different nuances in this particular chapter in the way they interpreted it and understood it. So I'm going to give you my best understanding of this text, and please feel free to give me any insight that you might have, anything that you think might help to a better understanding of the text. So here's what I think. I think what we have here is, how is the sanctuary funded? What we have here are people who have a desire to support the sanctuary's work. So they make a special vow of service to the sanctuary. Make a special vow of service to offer something to the sanctuary that can help it in its operation. The first thing it involves is people. Now, were there times when people were literally given to the sanctuary in order to serve it? I think that would be a yes. I think Hannah's prayer in 1 Samuel, I think, would be an example of this, where she prayed Lord, if you'll give me a son, I will give him to you. She literally did that. But it seems to be, from what I read, that the normal practice would be that you would dedicate a person, but the whole understanding is you would dedicate them only to redeem them back, to buy them back with this monetary payment. So what we have then in verses 2-8 is you're pledging a person, but the intent is always to redeem the person and to give money to the sanctuary. And so now, why not just give money to the sanctuary? I don't know. I don't know why not just give the money. I don't know why the need to offer a person to the sanctuary just to redeem them. But nonetheless, that's what we have here. And we have different values for different types of people. Now, some have used this text, verses 2-8, to say that, well, this just shows that the Bible is sexist because men are worth more than women. Well, the Bible's sexist. The Bible is also ageist because it also younger, more fit people cost more than the very young or the very old. So it's not about age. It's not about gender. What it's about is about productive capacity. Productive capacity. And normally what we have here is males in this certain age range have the most ability to be productive or to produce for the work of the sanctuary, whereas their female counterparts just cannot do as much work normally. So that seems to be the issue here. It's not about gender. It's not about age. It's about what's your worth as far as what type of work you can do. So that person who's 20 to 60 can do the most work normally. That male who's 20-60 can normally do the most work. That's why they would cost 50 shekels of silver, and so on and so forth. That's what we see in verses 2-8. We also see at the end of that, for the poor person, the priest would make an assessment for the poor person. Poor people, if they had a desire to support the sanctuary, they could also participate, and the priest would help them in doing so. Verses 9-13, there's animals that are given. And again, whenever we read in this text, any of these he gives to Yahweh will be holy. Will be holy. That seems to equal basically saying will belong to the sanctuary. So in doing that, he may not replace it or make a substitution for it, either good for bad or bad for good. But if he does, if he breaks that rule, then Yahweh takes both. Yahweh takes what was originally given and what he tried to substitute it for. Verses 14 and 15 are houses that could be offered as holy to Yahweh, as given to the sanctuary. Seemingly, again, I'm trying to understand this as well. Seemingly, this would be given for priests to live in. Same thing for verses 16-25. Fields that were given would be given for the support of priests in various areas. But again, these things could be redeemed. If you want to offer it, you could then redeem it back. You could buy it back by offering the cost of these things, the evaluation cost of these things, that would be given by the priest. But in verses 26-29, there are some limiting principles. First of all, being you can't offer the firstborn, because firstborn, remember, already belongs to Yahweh. So you cannot offer to him what is already his. If you have someone who is a person who is set for destruction, that person cannot be ransomed. So you have somebody who's broken a law, and you say, okay, well, I'm just going to offer this to the sanctuary, offer him the sanctuary, and then I'm going to buy him back to assure his freedom. Can't use that workaround. That's not going to work. Moses says, or at least Yahweh says through Moses. And then finally in verse 30 through the end of the chapter, we have here concerning what we know is the tithe, the 10th of everything, the 10th of the land's produce, the 10th of the grain, the 10th of the fruit of the trees. All those things belong to Yahweh, even the livestock, the herd or the flock, every 10th one that passes underneath the shepherd's hook belongs to Yahweh. If the person needed to buy back part of the produce, either to support his family or to maybe plant for the next year, he could do so, but do so not only paying for its value, but also adding a fifth, 20% to the value as well. But again, verse 33, if he is not to inspect. So this is talking about the the flock and the herd now. He is not to inspect whether it is good or bad, and he is not to make a substitution for it. But if he does make a substitution, both the animal and the substitute will be holy. They cannot be redeemed if he disobeys. And if he tries to make a substitute, that can happen. The Lord is going to take both what he gave originally and what he tries to replace it with. And that's my understanding of the text. Again, there's probably a number of nuances that I did not address, and maybe I'm completely missing how exactly this works. But if you do have any thoughts you want to add to this, please feel free to do so in the comment section below. I'd like to have a discussion with you. Hopefully you can sharpen my understanding of this text, because it is just, it's weird. The language is strange. It's obviously not something I've ever participated in, but I think I've got the basic gist of what is going on. If you have anything to contribute, please do so in the comment section below. But with that, we have concluded our read through Leviticus, which means tomorrow we're going to begin reading through Numbers. Just a little introduction to the Numbers for tomorrow. The English title Numbers derives from the Septuagint name Arithmoi, based on two military censuses in chapters 1 and chapter 26. The Hebrew title Bimidbar in the wilderness describes the geographical setting of much of the book, from the wilderness of Sinai to the arid plains of Moab, across the Jordan River from Jericho. So this text is going to it is bookended by two censuses, which is why we have the name Numbers in our English dictionary, or in our English Bible, as we just read. But there is a lot of action that goes on here in Numbers. It's not like Leviticus. Listen, if you read with me every single day through Leviticus, you deserve a gold star. Let me know. I'll give you a high five. Might even take you out to lunch one day, because that was a hard read. I'm not going to lie. That was a very hard read. Every single day, reading the text and reading my resources and listening to my resources to try to gather as much information as I could to present a clear and concise explanation and summary. That was tough stuff. But now in Numbers, we're going to get back to more so what we probably like reading more in the Old Testament, which is the narrative portions. There are still some instructions, and there's still some of that writing, but there is a bit more as far as some of the more exciting things that take place, just as far as a narrative portion of the text goes. So we'll be getting into that tomorrow in Numbers chapter 1. Thanks so much for being patient with me today, letting me get this out a little bit later than usual. I hope you have a great rest of your Friday. Looking forward to reading with you tomorrow in Numbers chapter 1. Have a great Friday, everyone. Take care. God bless.